Hello, listeners to Traversing the Stars. Today's guest is Mr. Robert Venditti. You know him from such projects as Green Lantern Corps, Demon Knights, and Exono Manowar. And today he'll be talking about Superman 1978. Now come join us as we go traversing the stars. I want to welcome Mr. Venditti to Traversing the Stars.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's definitely my pleasure. I'm a big fan, and as I told you off air, I've had you on several times, and it's always been one of my favorite guests to talk to.
Keeping the streak alive.
Yeah. Yes. So yes, at least you know what you'll be doing next year around the end of October, probably. Right. So I guess my first question for you, because you're working on a fantastic comic called Superman 1978, which is a really entertaining story, and it's based on the original Superman movies with Christopher Reeves. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's set in the same universe as the original Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve films. I think of our Superman 78 story that we're doing as being set after the events of the original Superman 2. So
okay, so we're not counting 3 and 4. That's out.
I'm not saying I'm not counting them. I'm just saying that where this story is set specifically in my headspace is after Superman 2. I don't know that it's necessarily super important to nail that kind of stuff down. We never say that explicitly really in the book. That's just kind of where I thought about it when I was writing.
So well, I was wondering when you wrote, do you remember when you first saw the original Superman from 1978?
I don't remember when I first saw the original Superman from 1978. I do remember when I saw Superman 2.
Yeah.
I very distinctly remember being in the theater, and I was at that right age. I was with my parents. That when he steps out of the particle chamber towards the end of the film and he kneels before Zod, in my little kid head, I believed that Superman had lost his powers and I didn't know what the world was going to do now. So I remember that very vividly. I don't remember seeing Superman 78 for the first time, but I mean, I've seen it so many times since then that, I probably was just a little bit young to remember seeing it that first time.
It really is a special time when you're young and you watch these things and you actually do believe these things could happen to like characters like Superman. You're like, oh my God, he could die. You don't, what are you going to do? But as an adult, you're like, yeah, there's a sequel to be made.
It definitely hit me at just the right time. And I think that it was a really important moment for me in my childhood because Superman has always been my favorite, not just superhero, one of my favorite characters in all of fiction. And it has to go back to that film and seeing, Christopher Reeve on screen in theater and what Superman represented and, how he wielded his power, just to help others and things like that. And I think those things were pretty formative on me. The way a lot of entertainment can sort of leave a stamp on you when you're little.
So why do you think Superman, especially Superman 2, why do you think that did make that such a mark on you for watching it? And what do you think they got so right about the character that sometimes some people can definitely argue that it can be lost in other translations?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking back through the prism of time as a grown-up now, thinking about it, but I've always been somebody who tried to see the good in people, and I think that people are inherently good for the most part, and I try to be an optimist even when the world's in dark times, and we've been in pretty dark times the past couple of years, and I haven't always succeeded, but I've always tried to do right by other people as well. And in times when I didn't, I try to learn from them and use them to make myself better, and those were all things that I see in the Christopher Reeve version of Superman as well. And I don't want to say that, I modeled myself after Superman or something like that, but I think that I saw on the screen something that maybe reflected the way that I wanted the world to be. And I think that's maybe what struck a chord with me. As far as what I think those, original films get right, I think it is that that decency and that sort of unbreakable will to do right and to do good by other people and to never use his powers to do wrong. And I
Mm,
think that uh, as decades have gone by, I think it's been viewed as maybe corny or hokey that somebody would be that way or something like that. And I think that's why you see a lot of times an effort to really push Superman into a darker place, whether it be in comics or in film or in TV or whatever have you. There always seems to be also this desire to show villain versions of Superman,
yeah.
Clark Kent, but from an alternate universe and he's bad or whatever.
Yep.
To me, those things are never hokey, and I think it's sad that people see the world that way, that it's so inconceivable that there would be somebody who would do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
No,
all
I
there really is
agree.
for him. There's no money in it. There's no profit in it for him. He doesn't get any fame out of it. He doesn't even get to date the girl if we're talking about post Superman 2, right?
Right,
So
right.
there's really no benefit in it for him. He just does it because it's the right thing to do. And that's what I think uh, people, I believe, misconstrue as corny or hokey, and they try to take the character in different directions. And that's why I don't think those directions fail. Whereas for a character like Batman, you can be darker like that, but to try to make Superman more like Batman, that's just never going to work.
I agree 100%. I think what I love about Superman is that he is earnest. He's an earnest character, and I think that is what makes him special. I mean, other than the fact that he's the first real superhero, he's obviously one of the strongest. What makes him great is that he is so earnest, and when written well, you believe it. You believe he's the Boy Scout, and you can buy into this one guy is not cynical. This one individual actually means what he says and wants to do right, and that makes him super.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Those original films, it was believable. So much about those films was believable. The way Christopher Reeve portrayed the character, you could really believe that Lois Lane wouldn't know that
Yep.
Clark Kent was Superman because he would hunch over and he would swing his arms and gosh Lois and gee Lois. Wilfredo Torres, the artist on Superman 78, he captures all that acting so great in the series, which is so hard to do in a static medium, but he's able to get the hunched shoulders and the swinging arms, and you really believe that people would not know that this Clark Kent person is Superman. Whereas if you look at something like, the end of Man of Steel and um, Henry Cavill shows up at the Daily Planet and he's like the most gorgeous dude you've ever seen, but like with a pair of fashionable glasses.
Right,
You know
right,
what I'm
right,
saying? Like
right.
nobody's not going to know that he's not that he's Superman.
Right, and I think one thing they did so well again with those movies is that they allowed Margot Kidder's character and the guy who played Percy, I can't remember his name, to be the cynical individuals that kind of reflect this is what the world is. So Superman is not. It's not like it's a fake world where everyone's like all happy and optimistic. Everyone's perfect. It's like no, everyone is the way you would expect them, but Superman is not.
Yeah,
Lois
and
is cynical. The others are cynical. Not Superman.
his hope, I think, does rub off on those other characters too, and inspires the people of Metropolis. And these are all the things that I think make Superman a great character. That he tries to change the world by example, not by force. You know what I mean? Like he lets
Yeah,
us all still make our own decisions to be better people, rather than, as some stories would portray him, ruling with an iron fist,
yeah.
forcing us to be better.
So when you're running for Superman someday, and we'll get into a little bit more details on it in just a moment. How do you focus on Superman as the image, as the idea of hope? Is that kind of where your ideas and it's your vision of the character starts from? To start from somewhere else? And also, how do you envision Superman growing as you're writing him?
Yes, I guess I envision him coming from a place where he always does the right thing, which doesn't always make it the right thing to do, right?
True.
That's kind of his weakness, that he's always trying to do right. And, sometimes if he just caves somebody's head in with his fist, he'd save himself a lot of problems. You know what I'm saying? But
Yes.
he doesn't do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I try to start from there. I really think about Clark Kent more than I think about Superman. What would it be for this kid to have grown up, on a farm in Kansas
Mm.
with Ma and Pa Kent? What would his value system be? His decency towards other people, his manners, the way he behaved towards others, respect for others, all those kinds of things. I kind of tried to start there because really Clark Kent is the character.
Mm.
Um, but uh, what was the other question? Was the other part of the question?
So also, I guess Superman once again, because in many ways, when you see him in Superman 2, in some ways he does kind of seem like a complete character. How do you kind of give him an arc in your stories?
I think the trick to Superman is to make sure you're including the supporting cast and all the things that ground him.
Okay.
Lois Lane, the Daily Planet, the city of Metropolis, Earth. I think if I wrote Green Lantern for a very long time. If you take Clark Kent and you fling him out in space, you remove him from all the things that ground him and make him so relatable as a
Mm.
character to people on Earth. Um, I think it's easier to send somebody like Hal Jordan out into space and keep him relatable because he is human and he doesn't
Mm.
have any superpowers and things like that. But Superman, if you remove him from the things that ground him in humanity, he just becomes another super strong alien out in space. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So whatever his arcs are going to be, it's going to have to pull on those elements that ground him on Earth, but also those elements that maybe make him feel like he isn't a part of Earth. He's
Mm.
just like a city person living in the city. I mean, a country person living in the city. Country mouse, city mouse. You might not feel like, no matter how long you live there, you might not feel like you really belong.
Mm.
I think that's an element to Superman as well.
So, how did Superman 78 come along? Did you approach them? Did DC approach you?
So I think, my background in comics, as I probably said in interviews before, like I didn't grow up reading them. I started reading comics in my mid 20s. Superman 2, as far as my memory, is my actual introduction to the concept of superheroes and certainly the DC universe. So I grew up with much more of a film, TV oriented understanding of superheroes than comics. Um, that's always been something as long as I've been working at DC, I guess over 8 years now. That's something everybody there knows in editorial because whenever they would ask me to pitch for a character, Hawkman or whatever, I would say, I don't know anything about Hawkman. I know what he looks like and I know he's supposed to be super confusing, but that's all I know. And so it's kind of like they joke about it, like we'll be at dinner and they'll be talking about, I don't know, uh, Galactus or something, and it's like I don't know. I mean, I know he's got big pink helmet, but I can't tell you anything about him, what he does or why he does it.
Yeah.
So, um, but they also knew my appreciation for Superman 78 because I've told the story to them, same as I've told it to you just now. And so I think when this project came up and they were interested in doing a Batman 89 and Superman 78, Andrew Marino, who's an excellent editor at DC, somebody I've worked with, I'm probably 100 issues of comics at this point. Um, he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to pitch for the series because he knew my background with this specific version of Superman. In addition to Superman being, my favorite hero, and having already done the Man of Tomorrow, uh, you know, series that I did that came out last year. They were self-contained individual stories, but they dealt with Superman, and so um, yeah, he reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to pitch for it, and so I came up with my idea. They said they wanted to use Brainiac. That was all they really said, and then I came up with my idea of what this version of Brainiac would be, and sort of what the twists would be that introduce conflict for Clark Kent and Superman in the story. And it's very freeing because you're now beholden to just a handful of films as opposed to, 80 plus years of comic book continuity, right? So you can
Yeah.
kind of pull the things that you want to pull and make nods to the comics, and that's great. But you also have the freedom to diverge from those things
Mm.
when you want to. So just as an example, using Brainiac, there's different versions of Brainiac. There's sort of the green skin, jumpsuit Brainiac, and there's the robot skull Brainiac, and
Yep.
so we use both. And the robot skull are the drones that the green skin guy sends out. So you kind of get both versions of Brainiac. So if you read the comic, you're like, oh, they gave us both versions of Brainiac, but we're
which,
staying true to the universe of the films.
we totally appreciate. Like I said, when I was reading, I was like, oh, he got both in. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing I just kind of interested, as you said, you weren't well aware with some of these combo characters, like you said, like Hawkman and some of these others. Does that give you think, a level of freedom or a lack of intimidation in going to these characters because you don't have the decades of, I've read this character, I know these storylines, blah, 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 that may handicap or kind of freeze and maybe another writer?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak entirely to that because I only know the way I am. I don't know how it
Hmm.
would be if I'd read all those other comics. What I can say is, for better or for worse, I think it is something that separates me as a comic book writer because most of the people writing comics have been reading comics since they were kids and have certain ideas baked into what they want to do. That can be a great asset because they understand continuities and things and they don't have to do research where I have to do research. But the way I kind of always describe it is I say you can't fake stupid, you know? So if you take a character like Hawkman, for example, I didn't know the day I went, the first day after they called me and said they wanted me to pitch for Hawkman, and I start reading about Hawkman on Wikipedia. As I'm reading, I go, "Oh, I get it." The Thanagarian space cop is the same guy as the Egyptian prince. He just reincarnates across space and time. Makes perfect sense.
Mm,
And I kept reading, and like that never happened, right? So I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm going to do then. That's how I'm going to fix all this continuity
yeah.
because that will make everything less confusing. If I had grown up reading comics and Carter Hall and Katar Hall were, completely separate and divorced in my head, maybe I wouldn't have connected those things because
Mm,
you can't fake stupid. Like I legitimately didn't know it. And so the first thing that dawned on me was the thing that seemed so obvious.
mm,
But it isn't obvious because one was created in the 1940s and one was created in the 1950s and one's
right.
from space. You know what I mean? There's all these things that get in the way, but I'm able to look at it from a perspective that I don't know all those things are getting in the way. I just make the sort of the obvious connections in my head.
So when you're writing Superman, 1978, unlike a lot, like if other people who are writing Superman just from the comic book version, just know, also get the comic book version. When the version that you're writing is a version that we have as fans heard and we've literally watched him move and interact. Does that create a challenge in writing it when you're dealing with something that readers have already know? Kind of like how, saying like the detail, how he sounds and moves, because we watched him in action on film in front of us instead of just maybe an image on a comic book.
Yeah, I mean, I have no way to, verify this or anything, but my feeling is that the Superman 78 Christopher Reeve version of Superman is the most well-known version of the character in any medium anywhere across the globe, right? Anywhere you go on planet Earth,
Mm,
people know that version of Superman,
yes.
right? They might not know Dan Jurgens' Superman. They might not know John Byrne's Superman. Everybody knows
Mm,
Christopher Reeve Superman. When they buy their kid a Halloween costume, they're thinking of Christopher Reeve Superman. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I like that aspect of it because it allows me to. There aren't a lot of characters that you can come to the table. Somebody like me who didn't grow up reading comics, I'm that mythical new reader, right? That
Mm,
everybody's always chasing. That you make every new issue as somebody's first, and so you want them to be inviting. You don't want them to be bogged down in continuity. You want to find organic ways to explain power sets and villains and whatever. There are very few characters, and I would say the three that I can think of are Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man. That
mm,
you don't have to tell anybody anything; they already know.
right,
They
right.
know he's from Krypton. They know his planet blew up. They know he's from Kansas. They know Batman's parents died in an alley. They know he's a billionaire with all kinds of gadgets. These things are given. So it's
Mm,
it's a great boon when you can work on a comic book character that isn't like Hawkman or even Green Lantern. Green Lantern's very popular and very well known to guys like you and me. When I told my
yep.
mom I was going to write Green Lantern, she had no idea what that was. She didn't understand how his ring made hard light constructs. You know what I mean? Like didn't understand any of those things. So it's a great boon when you can work with a character that comes with all of that knowledge already baked into it, so you don't have to explain those things. As far as the film version, people having heard it, I really tried to write the series with that in mind.
Mm,
Like there's on in the first issue, the first time Clark Kent run down the alley and opens up his shirt, we get our S moment, and he takes off flying.
yeah.
I had written that as a comic and not a comic from that film universe. I would have had him say something there. Or I would have had some sort of sound there or something, right?
Mm.
But instead, I did that silent with the hope that people would hear the music.
Yes,
You
that
know?
part does happen. 100%
Yeah,
does
and
happen.
so yeah, I've had so many people say, when I got to that page and I read it and I saw how Wilfredo drew it and he's flying right at me and whatever, I heard the music in my head, That's
Yes.
exactly what we were going for. Wilfredo Torres, the artist in the series, he's just as much a fan of this version of Superman as I am. He knows it just as intimately, if not even more intimately than I do.
Mm.
And so the communication between him and I going back and forth, um, in the script, uh, he really was able to execute these things in a way where you do hear the music.
Yes, you
That's
do.
Yeah, that's what we're going for. Yeah.
Now, I do want to get back to some other details about the story itself, but because you brought it up, I'm going to have to ask you. You mentioned Superman 1978, and then you mentioned Batman 89. In
Mhm.
your version, in your head, are they the same universe?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. And I
Okay.
would Yeah, and if I was gonna expand that out farther, this is just me, this ain't DC Comics saying
All
this, right?
right.
But if they were to keep doing 89s and 78s, it would be crazy not to cross them over, and I would expand that out even more into Wonder Woman 77
Mm.
and Flash, what is it, 92?
The yes, I know exactly which one you're
You know
talking
what I'm
about.
talking about? Flash
Yes, I
90
do.
maybe? Yeah. I would
Yes.
put all 4 of those,
Ship.
in the same universe.
Yeah, John Wesley Shipp. Yes, his
Right.
Flash.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And DC, if you're listening, you make this happen right now. You make this happen now.
Yeah.
That'd be a very cool Justice League to have those 4 characters together.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, so if they're listening, which they better be, make this happen, please, for me. Um, Another thing I found kind of interesting in actually reading the story, like I said, you use Brainiac, and I think Brainiac is one of those villains that every fan has been begging to see in a movie for now, was it 40 something years, been like, please,
Mhm.
Brainiac, show up in one of these movies. And so you definitely use them. And one thing I found interesting is that he mentions that he wants to preserve endangered species and is concerned about how the species' ability for global destruction. Is this just play into his need to preserve that one individual? Does this Brainiac have a sort of a consciousness that does have a sense of, don't want all this knowledge to go away? How does this play into how most readers reckon or think of Brainiac?
Yeah, we will get more insights into this version of Brainiac at the beginning of issue 4, where you kind of find out like a mini version of his origin story and why he's doing at a greater level than what he's doing. For now, for now, what we know is that he's a he's somebody who preserves and catalogs life.
Hmm.
Um, as we know from the opening of issue 1, he was present for the to witness the death of Krypton. He was unaware until this series that there was a Kryptonian who had escaped and was on Earth. He just kind of finds that out by chance through one of his drones.
Hmm.
And now he needs to go and get that Kryptonian because that's an invasive species that could maybe bring out a death on Earth that the same way that something happened, the same way that it happened to Krypton. So he comes to Earth to take away Superman for our own good, in the
Hmm.
same way that you know kudzu here in the South takes over everything. You know what I'm saying? It's an
Yeah.
invasive species. It doesn't belong here. Now there are such things as beneficial invasive species, right? The honeybee is an example. The horse is not indigenous to the United States of America, but it's become this indelible part of American history, right?
Hmm.
But Brainiac doesn't see it that way. So
So he does have a moral compass, it sounds like. This Brainiac.
sure, yeah, he believes he's doing the right thing from where he's sitting. Now he doesn't know Superman, right? He doesn't know how Superman is the same or different. He's judging all Kryptonians by what happened to that Krypton and not taking into account that as much as Superman has affected our world as an invasive species, our world has affected Superman.
Hmm.
He doesn't take those things into account, but from his perspective, his motives are pure and he's doing what he thinks is the best thing for the people of Earth.
In doing so, obviously, fighting Superman in any situation, anywhere, causes collateral damage. how does Black that in stop trying to stop Superman, you are creating the collateral damage to Earth and Earthlings around him? Is that something he's considering as well, or no?
Yeah, I mean, we won't get into that explicitly in the comic, but from my perspective, it would be an end that justifies the means. You know, if I
Mm.
have to burn down this patch of trees to kill the kudzu, so the kudzu doesn't end up taking over the entire Southeast U.S., well, then that's just something that
Mm.
you got to do. You know. Yeah.
Now, and also you also bring in Gene Hackman's version of Lex Luthor, who once is another one of those perfect villains, and if all the superhero villains have been around now since Superman 78, he's one of the still probably best regarded villains.
Mhm.
But I did have to wonder, since you did bring back this Lex Luthor, are you bringing back Otis at some point?
I don't have any plans for Otis.
No.
Again, picking this up from the end of, in my headspace, the end of Superman 2, Otis is still trapped in prison, right? Because Lex Luthor leaves in the hot air balloon and Otis gets caught, so he never gets out, right?
Oh.
So that's where Otis is at right now. He's still locked up, and Otis don't strike me as the kind of criminal genius that would be able to break himself out of prison, you know?
Right.
But that's not to say that if we do future stories, there won't be Otis or other characters, you know, from this universe, from the film universe, that make their way into the comics.
Now, is this an ongoing, or is this like a maxi series?
Right now, it's a 6-issue series. Yeah, that's
six
the whole
issues?
story. Yeah, and if they decide to do another one, you know, that would be another villain in another 6-issue series, I would imagine. And I think specifically because these are set in the universe of the films, I think that format works really well because you get it just like a film. You get a complete story, you get a span of time, you get another complete story. You know what I'm trying to say? As
Mm.
opposed to month, 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 month. That's more like television, I would say. You know.
You know, and one thing I thought was also kind of interesting is that in your comic book, you use the Superman shield that you
Oh,
see
so when
Superman
he
2
throws the shield?
when he flings out his shield, which once
Yeah,
again is a superpower that I think only ever existed in that one movie.
that's
Is
correct.
is
Yeah.
this just a nod to Superman 2, or is this going to be like a permanent power set of Superman in this series?
Well, I mean, yeah, he can do it whenever he wants to, but it was definitely a nod. I remember seeing that movie in theaters, and when he pulled his ass off his chest and threw it, it blew my mind. You know, just 100%. And so I didn't know that it was divisive. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had no idea that there was such a debate over that power. That people were like, it doesn't. That's impossible. How would it work? It's a hologram inside the portrait, whatever. You know. Wilfredo and I just did it because it's fun and we liked it and it's part of the films. So, you know, specifically again, working from the first two films, um, how do you not do it? You know what I'm saying? And you know, when that issue came out, boy, it sure did drum up conversation online. But I would say overwhelmingly it was people being like, I can't believe you did it. This is awesome. As
Yeah.
opposed to that's so ridiculous, you know, how dare you? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, when you get a character like Superman who flies, shoots lasers out of his eyes, is the shield really that big of a leap? I mean, that really the one thing is like, I can buy that he can move a planet, I can buy he moves at the speed of light, but the shield, you
Yeah, I
know?
don't know. I just visually, I think it's cool, you know, and comics is a visual medium.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was glad to do it. I'm glad we did it. But it's not something we're gonna do like every issue or something, you know.
Now, the one classic element of the old school Superman storylines is the Lex Luthor Brainiac team up. Now, you have him a little bit different, seems like Lex Luthor right now and how he's interacting with Superman and Brainiac. Are we going to see that team up, or is Lex Luthor more teaming with Superman at this point?
I would say read issue 3.
Okay.
You're definitely gonna have the answers to those questions in issue 3. Yeah.
All right. One thing I also kind of occurred to me that I thought was really kind of interesting. There's often I've seen, I think DC has done it before, where they've had the 78 Superman teaming with the 66 Batman, the Adam West version of Batman.
Mm.
And I think in doing so, they did miss the point that Superman and the 89 Batman make more sense as a group because they're both take their universe seriously.
Mhm.
And I think, do you agree that 78 Superman is taking Superman as seriously as would make sense for that character?
Yes, I think that if you were to look at Superman 78 and Batman 66, you don't look at Batman 66 and see the obvious building blocks that ended up becoming Superman 78, right?
Mm.
I think you can look at Superman 78 and see the building blocks that absolutely led to a Batman 89. You see what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Yeah.
So, what can our readers look forward to in the future issues of Superman 78?
Yeah, a lot more Lex, a lot more Brainiac. Got a big twist at the end of issue 3 that is somewhere. It's something that when Andrew first talked to me about the series, immediately came to mind. Um, it's hard for me to talk about it without spoiling it. I don't know, when is this issue going to air?
This will be launched November 1st.
So that's prior to when the next issue comes out. So I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah.
It's
So
probably a good decision.
yeah, but it is something we do in issue 3 that immediately came to mind when Andrew asked me about the series, is where I think Richard Donner could logically have been going after structuring Superman 1 and Superman 2 the way that he did. And some of the scenes that he included in those films, specifically in Superman 2, and I can talk about this more after the issue comes out, but some of those films, specifically Superman 2, there are scenes in that film that I don't know why they would be in there if he wasn't heading in this direction. So I don't know if that's true or not. It's just my interpretation of it.
Now, are we going to see other nods to the first movies? Like, is the Zod character potentially popping back up? Maybe.
In my mind, as we stand right now, Zod and Non and Ursa, I think her name was,
Yes.
They all fell down that chasm and they're gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you also make a reference that I thought was interesting, and at least I caught the reference to Cord Industries, Ted Cord.
Yeah, just having some fun.
Okay,
yeah.
So there's no potential surprise appearances by these other
anything can
characters
happen.
in the universe.
Oh, for sure, anything can happen. We could definitely have some surprise characters. I have some ideas. If they do more of these stories of other characters we can introduce, that's all definitely on the table. But for now, it's just having fun with things. I like the idea of Lex Luthor having to go apply for a job at Cord Industries. It's funny to me, and that's the kind of thing again where if you read the comics, that scene works for you because you understand what Cord Industry is. If all you know is the film universe, you've never read any comics in your life, you have no idea what Cord is, that scene still works. So yeah.
Well, I think you did a great job with the series. I enjoyed. Obviously, I read the first two. I think you did a great job. And I think, like I said, I felt when I was reading it, I could feel and hear Christopher Reeves in the scenes. You know what I'm saying? And I think in seeing the movies too, I think it helps because, like, instead in your brain, I'm automatically hearing Christopher Reeves talking the dialogue. You're like, that's him. That's Christopher Reeves. He has more lines.
That's a huge compliment because that's exactly what Wilfredo and I were hoping people would get out of this series, that they would hear the characters talking, and it's not just the dialogue that I'm putting in the balloons. Again, it's Wilfredo and his mastery of the mannerisms and the physical acting of these characters that really allows you to feel like you're in that and you're seeing a continuation of these characters and hearing those voices.
And not only that, but you do the same thing with the Lois Lane character and the Perry White character.
Sure. Yeah.
So the story in your mind is the setting of 1978, correct? Or
it's not the year 1978, I would say.
Okay.
I don't know, whatever year Superman 2 was, it's then, I guess, right after that. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if all Superman movies, all those movies are supposed to take place in 1978. I'm not sure. But it's that same aesthetic, that same universe,
Yeah, because obviously some stuff that you have in the first two movies, being 2020, you're like, well, that's a little more old-fashioned from what we see nowadays. But the basic experience is going to be as if you're in that same time period. So in other words, working phone booths, the old
we're not
school
have
phones.
Cell phones or okay. Stuff. Yeah, correct. Yeah,
it's probably better that way because I'm sure we'll be tired of seeing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because would the Daily Planet even exist in 2022?
Yeah, and with a title like Superman 78, everybody knows you're in that era. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
So, what else can the readers look forward to in future issues, and what else are you working on?
Yeah, I would just say stay tuned and see where we're going. Issue 3 is going to be a big one. That's going to really kind of point you towards what we're doing for the rest of the series, I think. Other stuff I'm working on, I have a World of Krypton series I'm doing with Mike Oming.
Oh, very
That begins in
cool.
December. You can get your orders in now. That begins in December. It'll be a 6-issue miniseries. Um, it's set on Krypton, in the time before the planet exploded.
Hmm.
I'm doing stuff for Bad Idea, which is a new publisher that started up. If you're familiar with them, so I've got a few projects working with them.
So,
And then I
so
have
sorry.
some other things working as well that haven't been announced yet, so I shouldn't talk about them. Some
Well,
at DC and some other places.
So interesting you brought up Bad Idea. I know the last time you were on, we did discuss Bad Idea, and there was a tweet some months ago that seemed to suggest that Bad Idea was closing. Was he just jerking around, or was a thing?
I guess you're gonna have to wait and see. I sincerely don't know what's gonna happen either, and I'm not
Okay.
BSing you. So I think you're just we're all gonna have to wait and see. Yeah.
All right. Because when you mentioned Bad Idea, I was like, wait a second. I know there's a tweet on Twitter, but he said, Bad Idea, and it had something like the last
Bad
two
ideas, bad ideas.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, but it's not. It sounds like it's not over. So I'm gonna think it's not over.
Yeah. All right. We'll see.
Well, Mr. Venditti, thank you so much for your time. You are fantastic as always. And anytime you want to come back, especially apparently October is the date. Please come back, and you're always a pleasure to talk with.
I appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a fantastic night.